Then there comes a moment. You no longer see stopping blame as a moral lesson. You see it as a survival need. Not because circumstance suddenly becomes easier, not because the people who hurt you suddenly come back to apologize, not because life suddenly becomes fair, but because after too many years living inside the same loop, you begin to grow tired for repeating the same story, tired of reacting through the same wound, tired of returning to the same sentence every time pain comes. Because of them, because of life, because of circumstance, because of the past, because I did not have a good enough beginning. And that weariness, if it becomes deep enough, will do something very important. It will make you stop arguing with the truth that, even though what happened was real, the fact that you keep letting it drive your life today, is also real. The moment of awakening is not loud, does not look like a powerful speech. It does not come as a declaration. From now on, I will be different. No. It arrives very quietly, on an evening when you sit alone. Look back over the years. And suddenly see, have been telling the same story for too long. I have been angry for too long. I have been waiting for others to change for too long. I have been using the past as a reason to delay for too long. And the most painful thing is no longer what others did. It is that I am still doing it to myself. That is a very painful realization. Because from that moment, you can no longer hold on to complete innocence. You begin to see your own part in your present suffering, not the part that caused the first wound, but the part that fed it, the part that kept it alive, the part that let it enter every choice, the part that pulled it out whenever you needed a reason not to move forward. This realization is not for self-blame. That is important. Awakening is not turning around and attacking yourself. It is not saying, everything is my fault. No. There are things you did not cause. There are pains you did not choose. There are lacks that were not your fault. But from a certain point on, how you continue to live with all of that is the part only you choose. And that is exactly where transformation begins. You stop asking again and again, who made me become this way, and begin asking, if I keep seeing things this way, what will my life look like 5 years from now? If I keep living as a reaction, what will be left of me? If I keep believing I have no power, who will live the rest of my life for me? Those are real questions, and they make a person rise. Not immediately, not strongly at once, but enough to begin changing. Real transformation rarely begins with a big act. It begins when a person is willing to sit still and stop lying to themselves. Yes, I was affected, but I do not want to keep being controlled. Yes, was abandoned, but I do not want to turn that fear into my way of living forever. Yes, I failed before, but I do not want to use old failure as proof against every new possibility. Yes, I grew up in lack. I do not want to make that lack my identity forever. Just being able to say that, a person has already stepped out of the first cage, because the most dangerous cage was never the circumstance. It was the belief that you could not live differently. When that belief cracks, light begins to enter. And then you begin to see. Stopping blame does not mean denying pain. It simply means, I do not want to keep using pain as a reason to stay still. Stopping blame does not mean forgiving everyone immediately. It simply means, I do not want the people who once hurt me to continue living rent-free in the way I react every day. Stopping blame does not mean life suddenly becomes fair. It simply means, even if life is still unfair, I choose not to hand it the steering wheel anymore. That is strength. Not the kind that strains itself, not the kind that says positive things to cover inner chaos. But a very quiet strength. The strength of a person beginning to understand. I may not control everything, but I can take responsibility for how I respond to everything. This is where a person begins to truly mature. They stop living by the momentum of the wound. They stop saying, I am like this because of life. And begin saying, I have reasons to hurt, but I do not want to use those reasons to keep impoverishing the living part inside. And once they can say that, a great many things begin to change. You do not react as easily as before. Not because you are numb, but because you are beginning to realize every reaction is a choice. You no longer wait for others to fully understand you before you allow yourself peace. Not because you do not need to be understood, but because you know, if I hand my peace over to the degree of someone else's understanding, I will be anxious forever. You no longer take one rejection as a conclusion about who you are, not because it does not hurt. But because you understand. One experience is not fate. One event is not identity. One chapter is not an entire life. That is when a person begins to live as a choice. Very slowly. Very truthfully. They begin choosing to see differently, choosing to speak to themselves differently, choosing to react differently, choosing not to retell the old story in ways that make them smaller. For example, instead of saying, I am hot-tempered because my family was like that, they begin saying, I grew up in a tense environment, so I react quickly, but I want to learn how to become calmer. It sounds small, but it is completely different. One is a box. The other is an opening. One is a sentence. The other is possibility. Instead of saying, I cannot trust anyone because I was betrayed, they begin saying, I was betrayed, so I am afraid. But I do not want fear to decide the whole way I love. That is transformation, not denying the wound, but no longer kneeling before it. Instead of saying, I cannot do it, my circumstances do not allow it. They begin saying, my circumstances are hard. But within that difficulty, what part is still mine to begin? That question is extremely important because it pulls a person out of total helplessness. It reminds them that even if they do not have all the power, they still have some power. And many times, that small part is where life begins to change direction. Real transformation does not make you perfect. You may still hurt, still get angry, still have old patterns return, still feel the urge to blame. One more time. But the difference is now you see it faster. You notice I am handing power outside myself again. I am using the past as a wall again. I am using circumstance to avoid a hard choice again. Just seeing that means you are no longer fully asleep inside it. And an awakened person is not someone who never falls back. They are someone who falls but notices faster. Someone who hurts but no longer stays forever in the role of victim. Someone who may cry because of the past, but no longer lets the past live the present for them. There is a very quiet beauty in this stage. Begin complaining less, not because life is lighter, but because you understand that endless complaint does not change life. You begin waiting less for others to repair you, not because you need no one, but because you understand that no one can live your life for you. you begin looking straight at the dark parts inside yourself, not to hate yourself, but to stop fearing them, not to know what needs healing, what needs stopping, what needs discipline, what needs tenderness. This is what many people want to avoid, because it requires a kind of courage that earns no applause. The courage to stop telling your story as if you are only passive, the courage to reclaim the power you handed away, the courage to accept that not everyone who hurt you will come back and apologize, not every circumstance will improve right away, not every fairness will arrive on time, but even so, you can still choose a way of living that does not keep deepening old wounds. And then, maybe very slowly, you begin to feel something. Life no longer drags me so easily as before. Not because life became gentle, but because I now have a place to stand inside. A place not built on excuses, but built on truth. The truth that I was once affected, but I do not want to keep surrendering. I was once powerless, but I do not want to turn powerlessness into my identity. I once had reasons to collapse, but I do not want to use those reasons to live forever under the ground. Maybe the moment of, so that is it, is not when you understand all of life. It is when you understand one thing that is enough. That what kept you stuck the longest may not have been circumstance, but the belief that you are only the product of that circumstance. And when that belief falls away, a person begins to have room to breathe, room to stand, room to live as a new choice.